All right. We are going to Humboldt County today. We are with John Casali from Huckleberry Hill Farms up in beautiful Humboldt County. It's snowing right now. So, how are things up there?
Everything's good, Mike. I'm happy to be on here with you today and really get to share the story of the small farmer and some
Yes.
of the some of the progress we're making and some of the challenges that we're looking at.
Yeah. I've often told a lot of folks in the government that Humboldt County and California are to cannabis what Napa and France combined are, and that the best growers are up in Humboldt County, and the small craft farmers up there, it's got to keep them alive because they're the ones that have so many wonderful strains of outdoor sun-grown cannabis, and we'll get into all that. But before we do all that, tell us your story. What's how did you get into cannabis? I know your mother was involved, so start there. It's very interesting.
Yeah, Mike, from as early as I can remember, back to when we moved here when I was 5 years old with my mom and my
Wow,
stepdad to this very same house that I'm sitting in with
really?
you today. Yeah, so I've been here in the same place for, close to 55 years now. And we really came up to the country to kind of make a lifestyle of our own, right? We
Sure.
didn't want to live in the rat race. We had our own ideas, what we wanted our family unit to look like and what we
Hmm.
wanted to create. And that included a vegetable garden and commercial fishing and, painting our house the color we wanted. And we wanted to, we're kind of part of the back to the land movement. We moved here in the mid 70s and been here ever since. And unfortunately, both my stepdad, my mom, and my dad they have all passed on, which we'll all end up in the same spot at one time. But it was really my mother who taught me how to grow cannabis from
You're
a
of
very
all things,
early
a
age.
mom teaching the son how to grow cannabis. That is so cool.
Yeah, it's so cool, and I see you smiling because it was a big struggle for her as having been raised as a Christian,
Yeah,
and always seeing cannabis and this plant demonized. It was hard really to overlook the fact that she was having her son help her do something that was illegal, and therefore we always kept that secret to a close family
sure.
group of friends, and we'd never told her parents. My grandparents really never
Okay.
knew what we did for a living, and it was always we were part-time commercial fishermen, we were part-time loggers, we grew cannabis part-time,
Oh,
and together with all those different things, including cutting firewood in the wintertime to supplement any income that we didn't make during
yeah.
the summer times. Collectively, all those things really allowed us to make it to the next year, and really that was the goal: is to find a way to be happy, to interact with your community, and to make it to the next year. It was never really for us about getting rich,
Yeah. So
and
you brought up something really good. The community. So a lot of folks have no idea. They hear Humboldt, they hear the Emerald Triangle. They don't understand how that community operated. Can you get into that because that's very interesting. It was a very closed off community that was very tight knit with each other. And so, can you explain how that worked up there?
yeah, from as early as I can remember, it was this community that really supported one another, right? And cannabis was illegal, like was talking about, and we always knew that loose lips sank ships, right? So you always kept what you did, no matter if you were going a little bit of cannabis or a lot of cannabis.
Hmm.
You always kept that amongst your closest knit group of friends, and then some of that outer circle got to know a little bit, and then the further outer circle got to know less. And so we really relied on one another with our lives, as I say a lot of times, because as these eradication teams would fly overhead in
Yeah.
Humboldt County in the summer months, and the convoys would be going down the different roads to end up in the properties to bust people,
Yeah.
it was. that tight knit group of friends that really was on the phone from the minute they left northern Humboldt, or if the feds were coming from southern part, it was the telephone game, right? Hey, they turned down Bryceland Road. Hey, they went out to Whitethorn. And once you knew they went by your house, you could go back to your house or you could leave. A lot of times, especially in the early 80s, most of the families left their homes in the morning, like at 6 o'clock, and would kind of meet in Garberville for breakfast and wait to see where the convoys went. And then when you knew where they went, as long as they weren't at your place, you could go back home and get the rest of the day going. But it was really this community that was kind of secret from the rest of the world. I used to like to think, and one of my good friends, he tells me all the time, he says, stop saying you guys were criminals and start saying you guys were outlaws, right? We just believed in this plant so much and we never looked at it as a bad thing.
Yeah.
And my mother always taught me that it had all these medicinal values and, it wasn't that harmful. So as a community, we decided that the county and the state and the feds really weren't going to help us build this magical land that we envisioned living in. And so together, collectively, we used to donate part of, that year's crop or the money that was generated from that year's crop to building technical rescue teams or volunteer fire departments or starting businesses in Garberville in the town of Redway. We built the schools out in the hills that are like an hour from town. So those kids could get a great education. So with that price that was at one time pretty elevated, north of 5,000 a pound at one time, we took a lot of that money and we donated and built this magical place that became our home, and that became something known as much for cannabis was this community and the way that people treated you and reached out when one of us would get busted. The other family or the other neighbors would come and help you out in some way or the other, whether or not that was bringing you food, whether or not that was giving you money. It felt like a big family that participated in growing this plant for so many years.
Yeah, very interesting. So you mentioned that you gave away a lot. You recently, 345 pounds you turned into, I guess, like RSO or some kind of a product. And you gave out 8,000 units of it. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so part of my story was, interacting with law enforcement, having gotten in trouble with them, and we can go into that if you want. But when I ended up getting out of jail, I wanted my participation in legalization to be something different. I didn't want it to be about money. I wanted it to be about having the platform to really share with people that now are going to retail shops, share to them what the Emerald Triangle small farmer went through to get to this point, where $1 billion industry is being created. Because I think there would be a huge loss for people not to understand that there was people that went to jail for decades, and there was people that really sacrificed their lives. And unfortunately, a lot of these people watch Murder Mountain, and they have really a wrong idea of who we are as people and as a culture here in Humboldt County. But yeah, we.
Well, you did time. You did 10 years. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and it's hard to believe everybody that I tell that what happened. They all say, "Oh, well, there must be something more. You must have had prior offenses."
Yeah.
I didn't snitch, and growing up, we were pretty naive. I didn't know there was a difference between state and federal law, and my bad. And realized very quickly after I got turned in that there was a huge difference between state and federal law, and when making a game plan to do something illegal like growing cannabis, the game plan was always if you got busted, for a first-time nonviolent offender in Humboldt County, you got probation. But with the feds, what ended up turning up, as I had 30 federal agents, show up at my doorstep one morning, I had the reality was that I was looking at 10 years to life for a first-time nonviolent offender. And, I saw plenty of movies and really was in disbelief. I said, oh, this is the scare tactic. This is where they want me to rat on the big fish, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as we were speaking a little bit earlier about community and about family, this community to me is my family. I mean, these are the people that I would protect with my life.
Yeah.
And so, as much as I want to say it was a really easy decision not to rat,
Sure.
the thought of going away for 10 years, possibly life in prison, is something that really challenges a person's values. And you really have to evaluate who you were and how you were raised, and if you ever coming back to the place where you grew up at. And, you know, I really had to prove to this community that I was who I said I was, and I did the crime, and I'm going to do the time no matter what. And it was the best single choice that I've ever made in my life, and it allowed me to come back here and meet a whole bunch of people that I love a lot and get a
Right.
lot of hugs.
How did it make you feel that your neighbor down the street turned you in? Like, that's got to be hard. I mean, did you ever talk to a guy and go, "Did you realize that what you've done?"
You know, they never tell you exactly who it is. They you see it in your paperwork
Yeah.
from the prosecutor. They normally call them a CCI, which is a confidential citizen informant.
Yeah.
It was easy by, you know, some of the evidence that they provided to the court that who it was. And I'm not bitter. It's
Yeah.
it's okay. You know, he did what he did for his own reason. He has to live with himself, and really happy that I made the choices that I made
Yeah.
along the way. And
So what did you? There's always a silver lining in the worst possible scenarios in life. So what did you? What's the silver lining? What did you learn? Did you, first of all, did you forgive your neighbor and just let it go? And
yeah,
then what?
unfortunately, my neighbor was 90 years old,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
you know, it's been about 20, 30 years now. And so, you know, he's moved on,
Yeah.
passed away while I was in jail. Um, what did I learn? I learned that, you know, it, it it's it was amazing to me, and I had seen so many movies that when, you know, I was green as hell. I'm a white kid. My mom was a Christian. I'm walking into jail, and
Yeah.
when I walked into jail, I had it. You know, I was at a camp, so that's compared to what other people are dealing with
Hmm.
at FCIs and maximum security places. I had it as easy as they could, you know, could be. I was in there with Bruce McNall. I was in there with Michael Melkin's co-defendant Charlie Knapp, who embezzled couple $1 billion. These were all white collar crimes, and I had the longest prison sentence when I stepped on the Lompoc prison camp. And what was really surprising to me was how people embraced me for coming in there. You know, the blacks, the Hispanics, the every different ethnic group really respected me for holding our mud, and it's really about respect in there. And so, you know, life was about respect, and in there it taught me how to respect all kinds of people, and that there was a lot of good people there that just got caught up in the wrong things. And I realize now that, you know, what happened in jail, it is really corrupt, the system that we're in. And I know, coming from me, somebody that was in jail probably doesn't hold a whole lot of weight, because of course I'm going to say that, but like, there was a lot of, you know, we used to give the guards a couple $100 during Thanksgiving and Christmas. They used to let us have catered dinners brought into the prison system. They would eat first, and
Yeah.
then there was about a dozen of his inmates that had been there for a while that got to have a, you know, nice
Right.
Thanksgiving and nice Christmas. So yeah, I don't know why I share that with you. I'm just
No,
saying
no,
that
no. It's
the
an interesting
system that
fact. Yeah,
really
yeah. It's exposing what it's like to be in that situation.
yeah, and even, you know, I'm super grateful. And ironically, after getting out of jail, the prison guard that used to be in charge of the farm system that I worked for,
Mhm.
and the warden of Lompoc, emailed me, and they both came up here for 3 days and spent the afternoon on my permitted cannabis farm. And
Yeah.
at the end of that trip, really just making sure that I was okay and my co-defendant was okay, who's now my neighbor. Um, they decided to take 6 plants, personal plants that's legal to grow in California, home.
Mhm.
And now every single year, those retired officers grow our genetics. So,
The irony of it
um,
all. Well,
yeah, right. I mean,
yeah.
it's kind of unbelievable, but Yeah, they're just doing a job. I have no resentment to the guards that are in
Yes,
there.
sir.
They're just trying to support their family
Yeah,
too.
they're that's their gig. So I want people to understand about outdoor cannabis. I think, like you said, you just get 5,000 a pound. There were so many great sativas that were growing up in Humboldt, and I really miss that type of a product. And what people aren't aware of is that the terpene profile of sun-grown cannabis is much different than indoor because there's all these rays that are not visible to the human eye that the plant can see, and it changes the cannabinoid and terpenoid, terpene actually profiles of the plant. Explain that. Like you've had some work done with labs and you've seen that. So what have you seen?
Yeah, exactly on point, Mike. You know, we've always known that outdoor cannabis affects oneself a little bit different than indoor. And I've grown plenty of indoors,
Sure.
back in the days, buried in the woods, covered with camo nets, underground, in tree, like all kinds of different ways. So I have no problem with indoor, and I do believe that
Yeah.
indoor has a place in the marketplace. Um, but it's just really different than outdoor cannabis that is subjected to the wind, the rain, all the different outside elements, and all the sun rays. And to prove it, right? Because we're all running around saying we have the best. We're all saying, "Oh, look at these terpenes, look at these cannabinoids," and
Mhm.
it's really, I got to imagine, very consuming, very confusing to the consumer. And so, decided to go this step further and reach out. Um, the head chemist out of Columbia University reached out to me after he tried some of our product and started doing these tests with it and proved was showing. We tested indoor, we tested outdoor, we tested same genetics that was actually bred by Jason Gilman from Ridgeline Farms.
Sure.
We
Yeah.
tested that, Jason.
I
Yeah,
know very
Jason's
well.
my
Big advanced
he's my
nutrient
running
supporter,
partner.
our organic program. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a big reason why he's won so many different awards. He really found a system in a feeding regimen with your product that's enabled him to just be that much better than the rest. And so
He's doing a
him and I
great job of
run,
branding.
yeah, he
So,
does. And he's just really being himself. And so
yeah.
for both of us, we work really closely together, and we've kind of found something that's enabled us to kind of figure a
Good.
couple things out, as long as, the market doesn't change.
Yeah.
But so
Well,
what were
we'll
we
get to
saying?
the market
Oh,
in a
so
bit. We'll
yeah,
get to the
yeah.
market in a bit. So,
So Columbia University does all this test. They're testing Jason's product indoor, outdoor, and sun grown, and they really showed that the terpene profile and that terpenoid that
mhm.
is,
Yeah.
the stalk with the round head that you're seeing,
Yes.
the walls of those, because they're grown outside and they're really subjected to the different elements, is a lot thicker. So when you harvest that and you cure it, if you're as long as you're not, putting excessive heat into it, and you jar it, it has the life of that product lasts a lot longer because the walls of those terpenes are a lot thicker than what is grown inside. You
Yeah.
know, and there's continuing studies now that they're doing that's going to even show it further. But we did publish a paper that I'll send to you that shows the difference between outdoor and
Well,
indoor, and it's
I'd
pretty
love to see
amazing.
that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So there's a lot more terpene development in outdoor grown cannabis than indoor. Is that
And
accurate?
and what was really shocking too is because, as we all know, the California labs are, um, there's some things that need to be changed a little bit with them. And what, if the labs aren't testing for certain terpenes, you're not going to ever know that your cultivars have that terpene in it. And what
Right.
we found with one of the cultivars here, like Whitethorn Rose, it had over 60 different terpenes. Well, the California labs only test for, between 15 and maybe 30 at
Yeah.
most terpenes. So we found some really unique terpenes in there. Whitethorn Rose also had 444 different cannabinoids. So,
Yeah.
um, it was pretty shocking, and I'm look forward to California kind of advancing in their testing labs.
Yeah, there's been over 500 cannabinoids that have been discovered, and over 2,000 different compounds in cannabis, and we're at the
Well,
tip of the iceberg. So,
yeah, right
yeah,
on.
but that outdoor, when I smoke really great outdoor, I love it. It is a lot different than the indoor, and I'm not knocking indoor. Indoor's great, light depth, greenhouse, outdoor. I love it all. But I want people to, especially consumers who are listening to this, to understand you're going to get a different outcome, a different effect when you try great outdoor growing cannabis, especially from the Emerald Triangle, because you guys have been doing it so long. Uh, there's just some amazing strains up there that just really. It
And
seems like
like
they're
you
getting
said
lost,
before,
or they're getting lost, and they shouldn't. There's a revival of these. We should get a revival going of these strains, and people have to understand just the quality that comes out of the Emerald Triangle, and especially the Humboldt region.
yeah, like you were saying before, I consider the Emerald Triangle, which is Mendocino, Trinity, and
Hmm.
Humboldt County, kind of like the Napa Valley of weed. And really surprised that Humboldt County supervisors haven't embraced, marketing and branding something so unique and special and world renowned.
Hmm.
They've kind of always hesitated participating in the cannabis industry because it was legal and it was kind of always them and us, and
Hmm.
they haven't fully come around to embrace us in what we're providing for the communities,
Well,
except what they're finally seeing is now that the price is, two, three, $400 a pound, you're seeing over 50% of the doors closed in Garberville. It's affecting the northern part of the county. It's actually all the way down to San Francisco. I think it's affecting businesses. So the cannabis industry, especially in the 90s when the price was high, had a huge dramatic effect on the economy for sure.
what do you think about the big cannabis business that's coming in, and they're the ones that have set the price. Well, it's outdoor, it's only worth this much, and if it's light depth, it's only worth this much, and if it's indoor, it's worth that much, without really understanding the true nature of quality. So, what do you see happening with the big corporations that are they up in Humboldt? What's going on up there, and how has it changed your life
You
as a
know,
grower?
um, I'm always careful about how I talk about corporate cannabis because just like I talk about indoor versus outdoor, I think corporate cannabis has a place in the marketplace, and
Mm-hmm.
they'll produce. They have been producing amazing qualities. Like I always bring up Glasshouse because I'm not really familiar, but
Mm-hmm.
I kind of know Graham through different events and stuff, and
Okay.
he seems like a pretty nice guy. I have nothing about no
Yeah.
problem with what they're doing there, and they're
Yeah.
doing what they're doing. And
Yeah.
so as a small farmer, several years ago, especially, partnering up with Jason and stuff, we really identified quickly the light at the end of the tunnel for us small farmers were those
Mm.
legacy genetics you were talking about. It's not growing more Gush mints or ice cream cake. Glasshouse in the corporate cannabis can grow those cash crops and get them, as cheap as they can into the jars and packaging and that kind of stuff. But the one thing that we're growing here on our farm is something nobody else in the world has. So now we're not competing with corporate cannabis anymore. Now we're really just trying to get that product out to the consumers and educate the consumers. And what is the most important thing to understand as a consumer is what makes me feel good might not make you feel good.
That's
And
right.
knowing your farmer and how they're cultivating what you're about to put in your body is the single most important thing that I keep trying to tell people.
Why hasn't a coalition been formed up in Humboldt where it's almost a co-op, and you market together, you brand together, and you get people to understand just how valuable the strains are that are in Humboldt and the difference than what they are currently consuming than the experiences they could be having. And to get that, it's kind of like the almond farmers. They made a co-op together, and I haven't seen that yet in Humboldt. And I'm just wondering why. Why in the Emerald Triangle can't a group of you guys gals get together and get on the same page and put your resources together and do something that's just incredible? Or maybe
You
it's
know,
already done.
I'm
Maybe
not.
I don't. Maybe it's already that way. I don't know. I haven't
No,
heard.
it's definitely not. And maybe we were looking for our supervisors to kind of embrace that and give us some kind of leniencies with their rules and regulations, which there's a ton of, right? Even having a tourism license took me over a year and a half to get on our farm, and there's only like four in this whole county that are able to take people from the public onto their farms.
We'll
And
talk about that more later. I want to dig
yeah,
into that because that's pretty cool
um,
what you've done. But just getting everybody together and just
yeah, you
marketing.
know, more like, kind of what Jason and I are doing. Like we talk every day, and I talk to Canna Country Farms, Teddy from them that
Okay.
that has this pretty well-known strain called number 26, and Jerry Savage with Savage Farms. These are guys that have been growing for 40 and 50 years.
Yeah.
And I guess in an unorganized way, because we've never been very organized and we've never run businesses, right? So we're
Yeah.
we're entered into this regulated market, never wanting to keep receipts or paperwork, and now we
Sure.
got to keep all that. And
Yeah.
you got the water board, you got Fish and Game, and it's just like it's pretty scary at times, and you always feel like you're just on the verge of getting shut down and forever
Yeah.
gone. But yeah, so
It's a hard road.
individually we talk, but there's no really organization where we all order the same jars, and we get them for cheaper. um, I don't know. I just don't know of any groups that have done that. We do have a trade association, HCGA,
Okay.
Humboldt County Growers Alliance, that
Great.
has a group of farmers that pay to be in a membership with them, and they keep us up on the regulations and
Okay.
really do as much as they can to fight for us. But you know, that they've been restricted from our own county. It's all still a little bit new to us, and we're just kind of figuring it out as we go. So hopefully eventually maybe there'll be a group of farmers that will come together and figure that pathway forward out. What we're really faced with right now is, the state is no longer renewing provisional licenses,
What?
and Humboldt, no, they're not renewing provisional licenses
Whoa.
after this year. So that's going to get rid of a lot of farms in California, and then also Humboldt County, specifically. A lot of those farmers are behind in their taxes, and they said they won't allow them to proceed forward
Right.
after March 31st. So there's 750 farms out of 900 that are behind on their taxes that could possibly go away this year. So
Sure.
um,
Do you feel that big corporations are going to move into Humboldt and stake out their territories and say they're Humboldt growing? I mean, what are your feelings?
Personally, I don't think so. I mean, Humboldt County is pretty rugged, right? We live in the mountains. We're surrounded by trees and creeks, and there's not really tractor farming up here. There's a couple bigger farms in the valleys,
Hmm.
honeydew farms, exotic flavors, but they're guys like us that just had the means to do something a little bit bigger, had the property, and they're doing some amazing work over there too. And I think corporate cannabis has found their niche in like Salinas County in LA, where it's flat. They can drive tractors. They have their SOPs, right? We don't. This farm doesn't have an SOP. This farm really operates on TLC and
Hmm.
touching every single plant, and it's small enough where it's just my girlfriend and I. And that's really enabled us to actually survive the wave of big ag, because we don't have that overhead, right?
Yeah.
And it's just me and her doing all the work. And I'm getting older though now. I don't know if
Oh
I
yeah.
can keep it up.
No,
So
keep
I might,
working. There's the two
yeah,
things that will extend our life, and that's our VO2 max and strength training. And
yeah,
it
yeah.
gives
There
us
you
a
go. Don't stop moving.
450% higher mortality rate. Yeah.
Oh wow, yeah.
No,
Don't keep
no,
moving.
not the opposite. Yeah, you live longer actually. Life extension,
Nice.
450% more chance of living longer. Yeah,
Oh, sweet.
it is. So let's talk about. You've got a tourism license, and I follow Huckleberry Hill Farms, and your place is magical. Some of the photos that I've seen of that and the landscape and the countryside, it is so gorgeous. I highly recommend anyone to go up and tour your place because it is. It's just a magical place.
Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate that. And that's really what we're trying to achieve here. I grew up here. I've been here for 50 years growing cannabis besides my little vacation to Lompoc. Um,
Okay.
and so I really wanted to create something magical and to reflect who we are as a culture here and be able to have the ability to tell the story of the small farmer. And when you come here, there's things on the property called like Farmers Mountain, where it's a whole bunch of logos and sayings from farmers around the Emerald Triangle, because I never wanted it to be about just Huckleberry Hill. One of the most famous sayings that we have here in the Emerald Triangle in Humboldt County is it's never going to be about one of us, and it's always going to be about all of us. And really have taken that to heart and trying to create a farm here that really shares that sentiment with those people that are visiting. And
Hmm.
hence we've had Woody Harrelson here. Some of the most famous people in the
Sure.
world have shown up here. Got to do a podcast with Bert Kreischer, Jason and I did, through the Gangier program that visited here. His sister's boyfriend was here, Ricky Williams, and
Hmm.
and and some people that I never fathomed would ever, I would ever be able to interact with, and
Sure.
really have gotten to enjoy some amazing time with them and really share the story. And it's amazing when I take people here. Sometimes I have 20 people here at a time, and they're on the side of the hillside, and I'm telling them some of these stories about growing in the trees and about
Hmm.
losing some of my best friends and stuff. And sometimes it hits people in a little bit different way. And I look down the hill, and there's like 10 people crying and hugging you. It really has a dramatic effect and a
Yeah.
lifelong lasting effect on those people. And you've broken through to somebody when stuff like that happens, and it feels good to be able to tell that story of my family and friends.
So when do you give your what part of the year do you give the tours? Obviously, it's got to be spring, summer, and fall.
So I
How does
get
that
two
work?
hours with you when you come here, usually, and so I want people to come here at the time where it has the most impact. And we plant usually these cultivars we grow here are really early flowers, so we have to plant them a little later. We plant them June 1st, so we start tours about mid-June through like 1st of September, and then we harvest most of our whitethorn rose and some of the other cultivars mid-September. So having earlier flowering uh, plants really allow us to get out a little bit earlier than a lot, and maybe avoid some of the bad weather that once in a while will sneak up on us.
Okay, you've got something
Yeah.
called, and this is clever, seed puck. So explain to people what a seed puck is, and I believe it's one of them's after your mother's strain, Marjorie.
Yeah, that's actually my girlfriend's mom passed
Oh,
away when she was
okay,
48. And I was walking around the farm telling stories about my mom, and she passed away when I was in jail, and how she taught me how to grow this plant. And so it was always about me, right? So I had to give her a little bit, and we decided that
okay,
we together would create a strain that her mom really loved, and we named it after her mom, called Margie's Magic. And
okay.
when the Emerald Cup was in full swing, like the 2018s, 19s, and 20s, and um, we were really inspired to do something really cool. And we got really stoned one night, and we came up with this idea: how do we get people to grow their own, right? Because I can tell people how I grow, and I can tell them, yeah, it's amazing, it's great, it's the best. But
Hmm.
what's really the most amazing thing, I think, for anybody to ever do is to grow their own, right? I would rather, don't buy my product, go grow your own. Because, and now Bert Kreischer is growing genetics from my farm and Jason's farm. And when you start a seed and you watch it sprout and you transplant it into a pot, and you sex it out if it's not a feminized plant, and you grow it throughout its lifestyle cycle, and then you harvest it, cut it down, and you cure it and dry it and you trim it, which is all a long process. And
Hmm.
then I get to share something that I created that depended on me its whole life cycle to get to the end. And I share it with you, and I look over and I see Big Mike smiling with from ear to ear. It really makes you feel amazing, and it's hard to share that story with people unless you've really experienced it. And so selling this seed puck really enabled people. I did two things. I won the most innovative product award 2 years back to back in the Emerald Cup.
Very cool.
One, the first year I put a feminized seed on the top of a seed puck, and I put them in one
Okay.
seed pack, and sold them through retail shops. the second year we went a step further, which I thought was even more amazing is, when you go and you purchase product out of the retail store, you go, man, I would love to grow this strain, whatever it is, right? So I feminized seeds of all the strains we were growing here. I put one seed puck with one feminized seed on top of the jar of the same strain that was in the jar. So if you like the weed, you could then grow the seed of that same strain.
Yep.
And it was a big hit. But what we're circling around back to running a business, right? Cost effective. It was definitely like I lost my ass. Excuse me. Sorry, I don't know if I can say that on here, but yeah, like that wasn't a very profitable project, and I've done more of those non-profitable projects than not. And so now I'm trying to figure out really how to survive. And that's the goal of all of us small farmers is now, how do we make it to next year?
Yeah.
Right?
So what do you think is
Because
going to happen?
we're all hoping for something.
Yeah. What do you think is going to happen? All those provisional licenses are going to be gone. The tax thing. There's going to be sounds like 150 of you left. I would say you need to form an organization and call everybody into the room and go, look, this is how we have to do things going forward. And
unfortunately,
start a co-op of some sort.
I think you're going to see probably 30 to 50% of the small farmers go away in California this year.
Wow.
And,
just Humboldt or all of California?
I think all of California is going to lose at least 30% of farmers. Like, it's not profitable to sell it at $200 a pound for a 5,000 square foot farm like myself, right? I'm not producing very much, and really have pivoted from growing for flower to actually now have entered kind of into the fresh frozen market, which is a little bit more profitable for those unique genetics that are grown full term, sun grown. Those hash makers and manufacturers really like the full term sun grown cannabis over some of the other stuff that's available to them. So it's allowed our farm with those unique genetics to move forward. But
hash is a big thing. Hash is turning out to be more and more popular because they're infusing it into pre-rolls. And I've always loved, hash. It's
I'm gonna
the first concentrate, right?
I definitely want to share some of the Whitethorn Rose. It's gotten a little bit of momentum. It won back to back 22, 23, and 24 Emerald Cup.
Congratulations.
Ice water hash, yeah. And, that's more credit needs to be given to the manufacturers. And, starting off with Belle from Heritage Mendocino that worked with Frenchy Cannoli for a long time. She was really the one originally that identified Whitethorn Rose as being something that was amazing and that would be good for that kind of product. Otherwise, aesthetically, the flower is a little stemmier, it's a little looser. Like no grower in his right mind would really want to grow that for flower because the pounds are just like giant and trimmers hate me by the end of it. And but for hash, it's amazing. It's a great yielder and it's really taken a life of its own. And Jason from Ridgeline with his Lance has done some amazing stuff. And so that the hash world is going to get big this year. I think a lot of farmers are going to pivot. For sure.
Do you think is there any hash contests up there? Any kind of events going on? People should be aware of.
Yeah, I think there's more in your area down in LA, like the Masters of Rosin.
That's right.
The Ego Clash happened in December, which is a pretty well-known big one. And then of course always the Emerald Cup. Hopefully, Tim Blake and Taylor can figure out a pathway forward, because kind of as we were talking about farmers going away, not only does it it's saddening to see that, but it also affects every other businesses, right? I'm imagining when farmers are going away, even though there's so many states you can participate in, it has to affect your bottom line. I would imagine it's affect every nursery here in Humboldt County, and every business, whether or not it's the restaurant business or the hotel business. And so Emerald Triangle specifically is feeling a dramatic effect with that downturn.
Yeah, I would imagine so. The cannabis space is going through a big shakeout right now. And you're right, probably 30-40% of the growers won't be in business. The growers that are staying in business are the ones that do have SOPs and they have it all documented and doing things precisely the same way, repeatable results.
Yeah, and I think of what you said before about losing those genetics, that's a big concern for me too, and especially doing these studies with Columbia University. Like none of us truly know, since we haven't been able to do any kind of real experiments medically with cannabis. Some of those genetics that those farmers might not make it, that might go away, might have the ability to cure cancer or autism
Sure.
or one of these ailments that we've been fighting for decades. And unfortunately, if they go away and those genetics go with them, it'll be a missed opportunity, I think. So, yeah, so hopefully they can figure out a pathway forward to shine light on those genetics.
I would love to see Humboldt County really get organized. Actually, the whole Emerald Triangle with a group that comes together and keeps it alive and keeps it going, because I believe that once the shakeout is done, those who survive up in Humboldt will have a huge, huge advantage. And you're not going to have as many competitors, as many farms out there. And the ones that are growing, let's say, some really great outdoor sativas, I believe that you don't have to take $200, $300 a pound for it. You're right. It's about educating the consumer to what is possible and what they're missing out on by not sampling and trying outdoor. And outdoor has got a bad rap for whatever reason, and getting a lower dollar. And it shouldn't. There's some outdoor that I have consumed that, I'd pay $3,000, $4,000 a pound for just to have it, because it is so good. And the effects are very, very different than, a lot of the indoor is just about THC and getting couch locked. But there's an amazing array of effects and outcomes that are available if people would just try the different outdoor strains and not go, oh, that's outdoor. It's almost like it's snobbery. It's like, well, if it's not indoor, it's not good. That's bullshit. There is so many great outdoor strains, and you're right. You have to be able to preserve them. And the folks that can preserve them and can group together in a coalition and market correctly, you guys are going to make bank. The future for Humboldt, Trinity, Mendocino, with everybody coming together and actually, I've heard like people, a lot of egos up there, a lot of infighting going on. Just knock that shit off. It doesn't get you anywhere. It's they say if you want to go, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go as a group. And one of the biggest things that I've learned is, because we were so hyper independent when we were growers and you didn't want people to know, we weren't great collaborators. And so one of the things that I've learned is that when you can put your ego away and you can come together and you can talk and not be yelling at each other and accusing whatever happened in the past is the past. Let's move forward. And collaboration is probably the number one thing that I had to learn that really moved the needle. And anyone listening to this in Humboldt County, put your egos away and come together for the benefit of all, and you guys will kick ass, take names, and gals, kick ass, take names, and be able to keep the legacy and the traditions alive and keep going and growing. And just like the wineries in Napa, I can see the day where people are going to be touring facilities and seeing how the cannabis is growing and understanding it. I mean, you got Cigar Aficionado magazine. Some day there's going to be a cannabis aficionado, and people who want the best of the best are missing out by not experiencing Humboldt outdoor growing cannabis. That's all I have to say on that.
Yeah. I agree with you 100%. And, Humboldt and even the Emerald Triangle, it's always been really laid back, right? So maybe a bunch of us aren't super motivated, and money came pretty easy, especially during the 90s, besides, all these helicopters and enforcement. That was nothing compared to legalization. Really, if you ask any of us permitted farms now, we would all want to go back. Like what we're dealing with now with the water board and fishing game, and
my life,
it's a nightmare.
My life was so much easier back in the day when I can think when I was a grower and all the regulations and bullshit you have to put up with this. But that's just the reality of the situation. And look at people who adapt and are the most flexible are the ones that prevail. That's just how it is.
So to my point, and I know you understand this way more than I do, is that it takes a lot of work. Like you have to work your butt
Yeah.
off. I'm up at
Yes.
4 in the morning, whether or not it's communicating with people on Instagram, pointing them to where they can get my product, or building relationships with manufacturers or distributors. And those relationships consist of trust, right? Like I'm sure you work plenty of hours
Oh
a
yeah.
week, if
Yeah.
not more,
I'm up
than
at
you
4
should
every
be.
morning. I'm up at 4 in the morning. I'm in the gym by 5 a.m. and I'm in the office between 6:30 and 6:45 a.m. And
So
that
as
does,
you're trying
yeah,
to collaborate with all these people and create a coalition that we all, what happens if you have half of those people don't want to work as hard as those other half? It gets kind of tricky, and I've tried to incorporate some of my farmer friends and team up with them per
sure,
se, but it's hard when other people don't want to put in the work, right? Because it's that constant juggle of, I don't want to answer emails. I don't want to give them, journalist pictures and stuff. Sometimes they're writing an article about your farm. You have to get them high resolution pictures within
oh,
a half an hour,
yeah.
within 20 minutes. Otherwise, you miss the story. So, kind of learning how to navigate that. And Jason and I are both, and Teddy from Canna Country are, really pride ourselves on trying to put as much work into it as we can, and
Oh, I
give
see that.
ourselves
You,
the
you
best chance
guys,
as
you
possible.
guys have I follow both of you, both of you, and you're doing a great job. And that's the route that you have to take, and you have to brand. That's going to be the
So
future. You're going to have to
I
brand your products. That's everyone has to do that.
so I don't know if this is the right platform, but we could
Go
cut it
ahead.
out. But so I know you've been offering, speaking of collaborations, you've been offering the community,
Yeah.
the different states, this ability for farmers to collaborate. I might be messing it
No,
up
no,
a
you're
little
right.
bit.
So here's the
So
way I look at it. We're building an ecosystem. So not only in our ecosystem, we now have distributors who will buy all the advanced nutrients grown cannabis that they can get their hands on, and we and then like working with Arroyo, working with Rhythm, and working with all these companies and different lighting companies, and we're building an ecosystem that can take care of 360 degrees, can take care of that the grower, farmer, cultivator, whatever depending on where you live, what you call them.
yeah, quite a few of my friends use advanced nutrients.
Yep.
Especially watching and trying to emulate Jason and what he's doing with your products over there. And
Yeah.
he's always talking about these pills. You got to put
The
the
voodoo
root pills
tablets,
in
yeah.
there.
They protect the
It's
plant from
pretty.
disease. But people don't realize that the plants have, in the vascular bundle, they hold a lot of different diseases. And when the conditions are right, they spring out. And so this suppresses the diseases from springing out and attacking your plant. And that alone will increase yields by 25 to 50%, depending on how bad your disease on your plants are. We protect against the worst of them. Hops latent is a different thing, but
Yeah,
Pythium and Phytophthora, Fusarium, we protect the plants from that very, very well. We look at the plant
nice.
holistically, from the roots to the very, very top of the bud. We take care of that plant. We have products to do that. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, and if you ever get the opportunity to come up this way, I
I
know
will.
Bob's been up here, and
Yeah.
he really, he does a great job representing advanced
Yeah.
nutrients, and he's so much like us. It's
He's my
like,
grow partner. We grew together
yeah,
outdoors. Yeah.
it's like he's like us,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
we'd love to wine and dine you and take you and
Sure.
show you some farms and give you a tour per
I'm going to
se.
do that. I'm going to come out there,
Yeah.
and I will be out there June, I guess you said it was. So that'd be a great time.
Yeah, mid
Yeah.
June. Yeah, we'll get a place for you to stay out at Shelter Cove on the Lost Coast.
All right,
Beautiful sunsets. We'll take you out to dinner and we'll wine and dine Big Mike.
man. I would absolutely love that.
S-
How do
Sweet.
people get hold of you? How do they get to the tours, the Huckleberry Hill Farms, and see the magic that I've seen?
So there's a couple different ways. You can either DM me on Instagram, which my old account got taken down, but I'm at Huckleberry Hill Farms _WTR.
Okay.
Or the best way, if you're looking to have a tour, is there's a company called HumboldtCannabisTours.com, and you can just go on his site and pick a day or dates or whatever you're looking forward to. Humboldt County forces us to have people come here with a licensed tourism guide. So there's all these rules and regulations that they make us jump through. But you're not supposed to consume here. But like, there's no way you're coming to a cannabis farm without consuming the product. So
you want to go to a winery? You want to go to a winery without having a tasting? Come on.
So there's always these gray areas, and we're always pushing the limits. And then you can also, if you're not able to make it to the farm, pickhumboldt.com is our website, and my girlfriend Rose updates that from time to time. So there's some really cool videos.
What was that again? Could you repeat that website?
Pickhumboldt.com. Yeah, and it shows you some videos from the farms and some different things that we've done. And I think people find it pretty amazing. And then, like I said, growing your own, Jason and I and Teddy are part of this seed site, tangledroots.com. tangledrootstore.com, and we're starting to slowly release our genetics, and that's really a tough juggle too, Mike, because those very genetics are the ones that enabled us to not compete with these corporate cannabis, right? Those genetics that nobody else in the world have, but that interaction with the consumer is really why we're here and what we're doing. And we want them to experience the magic. And when I wake up and people are showing me their plants and they look all feeble, we're trying to nurture them back. And, growing your own, like we said before, is the most magical thing a person can do.
Great.
So,
John, thank you for your time today and sharing the story of Humboldt County with our listeners.
Hey, can some of your team please send me or DM me your address? I want to somehow get you something to look at and see if you resonate with it.
You can do the California handshake. When you see Bob, you can give him a handshake. When I see Bob, he'll give me the handshake. There you go.
And I just wanted to say, really, I watch you and I follow you a lot, and I really appreciate the positivity that you're spreading in the industry. And you're doing some really amazing things, even if you don't know it. And just wanted to say I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you and what you're doing.
Okay, well, I'm going to hold you to it. You're a man of your word.
No, I'm a man of my word, and I will be up there.
You're coming up this summer.
100%. 100%.
100%.
Yes.
Okay, I got that on recording. Nice.
All right.
Well, thanks again. I appreciate you. You guys have a wonderful day, and good things to come.
Yep. All right, John. Take care. Have a great day.
Thanks, Mike.
All right.
You too. Appreciate you.
See you.